York police are kicking off their festive season ride campaign with a sobering message.
A daughter shares the tragic story of her father being killed by an impaired driver in hopes of sending a message.
My goals, my future, any life plans that I had been shattered in a moment.
Hear more from her and on what police are doing to stop impaired driving. That's coming up.
A house explosion rattles an East York neighborhood, the force of the blast blowing out the front of the home. Plus,
it's unacceptable, and stop acting like a bunch of buffoons.
Doug Ford lashes out at protesters outside his home as the province reports a record number of COVID-19 cases. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. A woman who lost her father to impaired driving is recounting her pain in the name of prevention. Narusha Mahendram spoke in front of a spot check on the first day of York Regional Police's annual holiday season ride campaign. Mahendram hopes sharing her story will make people think twice about getting behind the wheel impaired. Our Angelina King shares her story.
The trauma doesn't end. The suffering does not end.
Narusha Mahindram's father was hit and killed by an impaired driver last New Year's Eve, the day before her 30th birthday, 4 months after she lost her mother.
So that night had just practically changed my entire life for me. My goals, my future, any life plans that I had been shattered in a moment.
On the day he died, Mahindram Salatare had been out getting groceries and delivering Christmas gifts. On his way home, he decided to grab dinner for the family. Meanwhile, 40-year-old Stanley Choi was driving impaired. He was arrested, charged, and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Mahindram says her father was kind, a go-getter, and somehow always knew when others needed extra support.
Whether my teachings that my mom had taught me about how to be a good person or the hard work that my dad had taught me on to always persevere, I think both of that just combined to kind of get me this far.
And gave her the strength to share her story in hopes of putting an end to impaired driving. She spoke just meters away from where her dad was killed and where York police set up their first spot check of their annual holiday ride campaign. In this pandemic year, officers will be out in residential neighborhoods and patrolling back roads.
We consider a suspected impaired driver a crime in progress, and you should never hesitate to call 911.
Using equipment like this, York police have laid more than 1,600 impaired driving related charges so far this year, and the deputy chief says they're on track to surpass last year's number of 1,700.
It is frustrating. It tells me that we need to do more. It also tells me that the members of the community that are choosing to consume alcohol or drugs before they operate a vehicle need to listen more. But it also tells me that we really have stepped up our enforcement.
For anyone who considers driving even the slightest impaired, Mahindram has this to say.
Don't. Just don't get behind the wheel.
A simple message from a woman suffering an enormous loss. Angelina King, CBC News, Markham.
Residents in an East York neighborhood roused from their homes tonight by a house explosion.
So we came out when all of the fire trucks were here, and then we see that the front window's blown out on the house. There was smoke pouring out.
When the initial crews got here, basically you can see the damage to the building. We went in, there was a very small fire in the basement.
Crews were able to quickly extinguish the fire. The platoon chief says a family of 4 lives in the basement, but were able to make it out. He also said 3 men live on the 2nd floor and 1 woman lives on the 1st floor. Luckily, no one was seriously injured. The cause of the explosion is now under investigation. A hazardous materials truck was called to the scene to monitor the air quality as a strong odor was coming from the home. And we're learning more about the tragic confrontation near Lindsay, Ontario yesterday that left a 1-year-old boy dead. It began with an alleged abduction and ended in a police shooting. Tonight, we're hearing from a man who opened his door to a frantic family looking for help. Magda Gabrislasi has the details.
Tom DeCiccio answered his door to a family running to safety.
There was a lady, there was her mother-in-law, there was her little 3-year-old, and they were quite upset.
DeCiccio's neighbors were running from this home in Bobcaygeon, the starting point of what would turn out to be a deadly incident in the Kawartha Lakes area. DeCiccio said the woman told him her husband had taken off with the younger child.
The man obviously had some sort of an episode and was apparently threatening them.
Police say they tried to stop the man in the pickup truck about 30 minutes away. Eventually, there was a crash on this road. The Special Investigations Unit tells us then an interaction ended with 3 officers firing their guns. We know that the father was shot and taken to a trauma center. An officer who was outside his vehicle was also seriously injured in the crash. And the 1-year-old boy was found dead in the vehicle.
They came and informed the lady that her young son was deceased. And that was even more disturbing. It was awful. Yeah, she was really upset.
The SIU confirmed the child had a gunshot wound. Today, investigators said they retrieved 3 firearms from the police officers, and a gun was found inside the truck. While we were there, police investigators arrived to speak with DeCiccio. The SIU says it's too early to say what happened here. We do know that both the father and the police officer remain in hospital tonight. As for the child, an autopsy has been scheduled for tomorrow in Toronto. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Kawartha Lakes, Ontario.
Turning to the pandemic, Ontario has shattered its record for new daily COVID-19 infections. The province is reporting 1,855 new cases today. A record was also set for the number of tests done. Provincial labs processing 58,000 tests over the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, 20 more people have died from the virus. That brings the death toll from COVID-19 in the province to almost 3,600. There are a number of vaccines close to being rolled out to protect against the disease. The Premier pushing the Prime Minister today for more answers on a timeline. We also heard from the retired military general who will be in charge of vaccine distribution in Ontario. Lorenda Redekop has more.
The Premier met with the person leading Ontario's vaccine plan, retired General Rick Hillier, who says he's bringing over some of his former military colleagues to help with planning.
Our mandate is clear. We're going to be ready for 31 December.
Their role will be distributing the vaccines and figuring out where people will get their shots. It'll be a much bigger job than the annual flu campaign.
A massive logistical undertaking, the likes of which this province has never seen.
The federal government's role is in procuring the vaccines. The premiers spoke with the Prime Minister last night.
I told the Prime Minister that we need answers and we expect answers because we can't have Canadians watching as our allies start getting vaccines without having a clear answer on when we will be getting it. And my friends, the clock is ticking. We can't be last in line.
When a vaccine is ready, Canada will be ready.
The Prime Minister had no more details on when vaccinations could start, but did say this about the timeline.
The doctors highlighted that if all goes according to plan, we should be able to have the majority of Canadians vaccinated by next September.
And today he announced another former military leader will head federal efforts. Major General Danny Fortin led NATO forces in Iraq. One challenge so far for vaccinations, the health minister acknowledged the 2 vaccines farthest along are not approved for children, though some others that are close are. Just one difficulty Hillier is already anticipating.
I'm glad that the Premier and the Minister have confidence in me, and I hope that they continue to have that confidence when we hit that first speed bump that the Premier described and people start screaming, because we will and they will.
Now the province is looking for answers on when the vaccines will arrive, the quantity, and which ones, so it can organize the logistics of getting shots into people's arms. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The owner of Adamson Barbecue, Adam Skelly, has been released on bail. Skelly was arrested yesterday after days of anti-lockdown protests at his Etobicoke restaurant, which he refused to close. A crowd of his supporters gathered around him, some of them swarming officers and shouting at them to let him go. Skelly is facing numerous charges, including trespassing, intent to obstruct police, and violating indoor dining rules. A number of protesters later turned up at the Premier's home. Today, Doug Ford lashed out at those demonstrators.
It's not small business owners that are protesting in front of my house. They're special interest group, political groups. It's unacceptable, and stop acting like a bunch of buffoons out there and start respecting the people of Ontario. You want to come at me? Come at me. Leave my family and leave my neighbors alone.
In an unusual move, police homicide detectives took the media on a tour of an area along the Humber River and Highway 27. It's where a homeless man was brutally murdered in his sleep under a bridge. Detectives are appealing for more information that may help solve the crime.
The stabbing was extreme to the point where it was overkill in my view. Mr. Singh was likely fast asleep in blankets and a sleeping bag. It was an unprovoked attack.
Year-old Rampreet Singh, who was also known as Peter, was found by a jogger. His bloody body lay next to a path beneath a bridge over the West Humber River. Investigators say they have looked at every video they could find of that area, but it hasn't helped them in their case. They're hoping the media coverage today will prompt someone with information to come forward. A renowned forensic psychiatrist returned to the stand in the trial of Alek Minassian today, this time being cross-examined by the Crown. The cross-examination was brief. As Trevor Dunn reports, the defense still hasn't presented an expert to fully back up its core argument, but that may change next week.
Over the past 2 days, Dr. John Bradford testified extensively about Alek Minassian, psychiatry, and Section 16 of the Criminal Code of Canada. It is the essence of this case, and according to the law, no person is criminally responsible for an act committed or an omission made while suffering from a mental disorder that rendered that person incapable of appreciating the nature and quality of the act. Minassian is arguing his autism prevented him from knowing that the deadly van attack was wrong and that he should be found not criminally responsible or NCR. Bradford is a leading authority on violent crime and the human mind, and he's been involved in the trials of notorious killers such as Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, Robert Pickton, and Russell Williams. He testified that Minassian's autism is a very different defense from other NCR defenses, in which the accused is often suffering from intense psychosis and delusions. The relationship between autism and violence is more complicated, Bradford testified. Asked if autism causes someone to commit mass murder, he responded, absolutely not. The majority of people who have autism have no history of criminal behavior. In fact, in cross-examination, Bradford testified that he doesn't see how autism could impair Minassian enough to make him NCR. I don't believe it reaches the impact that psychosis does, he testified. I can't get my head around how this would impact a person's operating mind that it would get them into Section 16. While Bradford did provide important expert context for the trial, he did not back up the defense's central argument. In fact, at this point, no witness has. That could all change on Monday when Dr. Alexander Westphal is called to testify. The Yale School of Medicine professor is described in court documents as the defense's key witness. Trevor Dunn, CBC News, Toronto.
Time for a short break now. When we come back, is it time to tear down Rogers Centre? A report says the owners of the Blue Jays are looking for a new nest to call home. Those details coming up. Plus,
a pleasant weekend in store until Monday brings rain and snow for parts of southern Ontario. Your full forecast after the break.
The future of the Rogers Centre, home of the Blue Jays, is up in the air. According to a story from the Globe and Mail, the company is looking at tearing it down and starting new. And that's garnered mixed reaction from fans. Alek has the story.
Is the Sky Dome sky done? Well, technically it was back in 2004 when Rogers bought and renamed it, but whatever you want to call it, the nostalgia around this building is potent.
You know, it's a piece of history.
It might be history. According to a scoop from the Globe and Mail, the owner of the Toronto Blue Jays wants to demolish the Rogers Centre and construct a new stadium. And that Rogers and a real estate firm are in talks with all levels of government to make it happen. None of the involved parties would comment, but the news is enough to get people talking.
I think we would lose a valuable part of our skyline, a very iconic part of our skyline.
I mean, think about what it would do to the Toronto skyline. To get rid of the Rogers Centre would be like to get rid of the O in the iconic TO skyline. Others...
I'm not one for nostalgia. Make it bigger, better. I like to see natural turf for the players to play on.
Big Jays fan my whole life. Tough to see it go, but why not have top of the line places like everywhere else does, right? Some of these teams that aren't as heavy supported like the Blue Jays are, and they have these top of the line facilities, like, you know, Rogers is a big company. Why can't we have some of the good stuff too, right?
Why can't we have nice things?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complicated place.
Sports writer Andrew Stoughton agrees. When it comes to the 31-year-old stadium, change is good.
I thought it was amazing. And, you know, it's something that I've sort of heard whispered for a while in terms of like the amenities, in terms of like just the seats. You know, it would be nice to have seats that face home plate.
Do you have any Sky Dome or Rogers Centre memories?
I do, not a lot that I'd want to say. Those are the best ones. That's part of the charm, and I think we'll definitely lose that if we move to a stadium that's more oriented towards the corporate fan. Or pro sports are just it's an industry where people are getting priced out of.
Rogers says plans to flip the stadium have been on the back burner since the beginning of the pandemic. Some more time to reflect on some of those iconic moments in an iconic building.
I've been going to Jays games since I was a kid. In high school, I'd be down here like 3 times a week sometimes. So it's always going to mean a lot to me. And I think whatever they would do to bring it back is probably going to pay tribute to it somehow.
Alek, CBC News, Toronto.
Cloudy with some clear breaks tonight, the rain holding off for now. This after a gloomy day, the sun not making much of an appearance. Let's go to our meteorologist, Nick Cernkovich. And Nick, we will see some sunshine this weekend, but we can't expect another system to move in come Monday.
Hi, Kelda. Well, you could say it's a little bit of a cliche, but this weekend will be the calm before the storm. We've got a pretty big storm system headed our way for next week, but before that, a nice weekend. So there's a look at your weather headlines. And yes, you can expect to see both rain and snow to kick off next week. We'll get to that in your long-range forecast. 8 degrees today is what we hit in the city of Toronto. That was a little bit higher than I expected, but I don't think anybody's complaining. So we head through tonight, a few spotty showers, and as the temperatures drop close to the 0 mark, look for some wet flurries for the late overnight period into tomorrow morning. However, those will clear up pretty quickly. By the afternoon, we're looking at clearing sky cover, and clear skies basically stick around right until Sunday. But Sunday night into Monday, a Texas low that's developing is going to make its way into the GTA, and this is what it'll look like by Monday afternoon. Now, Toronto and most surrounding areas sit right on that rain-snow line. So it starts out as a rainfall event, at least this is what the models are saying right now, as a rainfall event for the city of Toronto, snow to the north. But as the whole system slides eastward, it's actually going to stall out, and that's going to lead to snow, and in some places, significant amounts of snow with lake effect in some of those typical snowbelt areas. Those places could see 20, 30 centimeters of snow. For the GTA on Tuesday, about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow is what we're looking at right now. Now, again, because we're right on the edge of that system, the rain-snow line, this could shift over the next couple of days. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Here's a look at the forecast for tonight. -1 in southwestern Ontario. Some slick roads in some areas, especially out toward the London area, as the temperatures hover around the 0 mark. Tomorrow, 5, 6 degrees and mainly sunny skies. A little breezy, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour is what we're looking at. For the Golden Horseshoe, similar temperatures through the overnight. but just above the 0 mark. However, as you get away from the lake and temperatures hit the 0 mark, watch for icy roads, and again, a few spotty scattered showers through tonight, changing to wet flurries for tomorrow morning, and then it clears out by the afternoon. Highs to 5 degrees, once again, which is pretty much bang on seasonal for us, or just a hair above the seasonal mark. Now here's a look at your 5-day forecast. Nice looking weekend, 5 and 7, at or above seasonal. Monday, look for rain to move in through the late morning hours, and then that's going to switch over to snowfall as we head toward Monday night on the backside of this storm. Pretty windy as well, gusts to about 60 kilometers per hour, and that storm system sort of gets cut off and lingers around. So about 2 to 5 centimeters for the GTA, but areas north, significantly more snow in the forecast. Kelda.
All right, we'll enjoy the nice weather while it lasts. Thanks so much, Nick.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
The unofficial kickoff to holiday season shopping is underway. This year will be critical for retailers struggling to make sales and for shoppers to follow COVID-19 restrictions to stay safe. Nazima Walji has more.
Lines of people stretched around Vaughan Mills Shopping Centre.
Despite the pandemic, Black Friday's allure was too hard for some shoppers to ignore.
I gotta get at least 2 new shoes. Yeah. Maybe a bubble jacket. I'm looking for the best deals on clothes.
In Peel and Toronto, most stores are only open for curbside pickup due to COVID-19 restrictions, sending bargain hunters to brick-and-mortar stores across the border to York Region.
Well, I mean, I can't shop in Toronto. That's why I had to come here. If I could shop in my city, I would, though.
I'm from Ajax. Toronto.
Yeah. But this Black Friday, one of the biggest shopping days of the year, experts say most sales are expected to be online.
And 97% of people who are going to shop this holiday said they were going to make a purchase online, which is a huge increase. In the first 3 minutes after midnight, Shopify merchants broke last year's record for peak sales per minute.
Obviously, you know, you can stay home and purchase online. That's probably the preferred route.
Vaughan's mayor understands the ritual that comes with Black Friday was bound to bring people into the city, but put measures in place to reduce risks.
Oh, we reduced the capacity, which is very important. For example, Vaughan Mills down to 4,000 customers. That's fundamental. And to make sure that there are hand sanitizers and make sure that everybody's practicing physical distancing. I think Black Friday is the real test. It will measure our capacity to be responsible individuals. And I think and believe, because of my trust in people and my confidence in their intelligence and common sense, we're just going to be fine.
While people are taking precautions,
we have like sanitizer. I'm wearing double mask. He has a pretty good mask on with filters.
Keep your distance, stay away from people. Put it on your mask when you're indoors and as well as close to people. And stay away from seniors as well.
COVID case counts will reveal the impact of shopping in person this Black Friday in a couple of weeks. Nazima Walji, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's our show for you tonight and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. Have a great weekend, everyone.